Hey, badass business owners, welcome to another episode of the Local Small Business Coach Podcast, where each episode we work on getting you to $100,000 in take-home pay. So if you're all ready to boost your profits, increase your sales, improve your processes, and develop stronger teams so you can stop living job to job, then let's dive in. Hey, badass business owners, welcome back to the show. It is Thursday. That means it's a Know Your Numbers episode, which means we're going to take a dive into numbers and just try to help make them make sense. I will let you know, not every episode do I expect you to memorize everything that we say, which is why we're going to keep talking about things on a regular basis using different examples. So this way it can start planting seeds inside of your head and you can start and continue to grow your knowledge so that this becomes second nature to you. And that's why I'm putting the course together. I've got some of the videos. My main goal, once again, is to help you become numbers experts. Listen, one of the things that I hear all the time from people when it comes to numbers is they go online and they look at things and they look at YouTube videos by other people and they talk to their accountant and they talk to all these different people and they just get so overwhelmed by all the different numbers that they have to know. Well, folks, there's not a lot of numbers that you need to know. You need to understand certain things within your business to be successful. Sure, if you were running $1 billion company, you would need to know some of the weird acronyms that are out there, EBITDA, this and that. And, there's so many different ones that are out there. But I'm telling you, for the vast majority of you with your small businesses, there is a handful of things that you need to know that if you knew these handful of things, you could make serious changes and make serious profits within your business. And that's what we do here on our Know Your Numbers series. And this is what I do in anything that I put out there is I want to try to make it less complicated. I want to kind of go through all of the noise that is out there and help you laser in on the 3 or 5 things that if you knew and looked at on a regular basis, it would help you grow your business, grow your sales, grow your profits, more importantly, because at the end of the day, it's all about how much money you put to the bottom line. Now, with that, I do want to dive in today and talk about a conversation that I've had with some folks in regards to gross margin. As you know, the number one calculation that I think you need to know, no matter how much you hate math, is gross margin. Because everything starts with gross margin. Because if you think about it, no matter what, if you do nothing else, everything you do starts with someone paying you to do something, correct? So top line sales is someone paying you to do something. And in order for you to figure out your profit, the first thing that comes off of that is your cost of goods, what it's costing you to do that sale. So for example, if you sell a widget for $10, how much did that widget cost you? Maybe that widget cost you $5. Maybe that widget cost you $2. Your gross margin is the difference between the two. So if it was $10 that you could sell it for, but yet it cost you $2, your profit starts off at the $8. Now that's not your final profit. That's just what we call gross profit or gross margin. Gross margin is the technical term for it because that's the profit that's initially done before you pay everything else that you need to pay before you get to that final profit. Now, if you have a service-based business, it gets a little bit trickier, right? Because not always do you have actual products that you use because you have more of what's called a labor hour that is associated with that product or service. So if you're installing a water heater, you're going to have the cost of the new water heater unless they bought it themselves. You're going to have some parts that you need to install, but you're also going to have the hourly wage attached to the person that is doing it. Now, for most of you, that person happens to be you, but you need to assign a labor hour to it. If you were to hire someone to do that install for you, are you paying them $30 an hour, $40 an hour, $10 an hour, $15 an hour? It depends upon what your service is. Obviously, some services, someone who's going to pay a carpet cleaner is going to be a lot different than someone who installs official plumbing stuff. It's going to be a little bit different because of the skill set that is needed. But once again, no matter what, it's still at the end of the day, the gross margin. And behind gross margin dollars is what's called gross margin percent. If you look at your profit and loss, your income statement, whatever it is that your accountant is calling it, one of the things that they have is it's going to be tied to a percentage because they're going to say a certain percentage of every dollar is made from every sale, every transaction. So I'm going to use an example. Let's just say you sell something for $60, and let's just say that the cost of goods is $25. That means that your gross margin is going to be the $60 minus the $25, which is going to be $35. And if you recall, we also have a percentage attached to it. So in this particular case, we're going to take our gross margin dollars and divide it by our sales. So if we take that $35 we made and divide it by the initial $60 we made, it tells us that our gross margin percentage is 58%. Follow along. And let's just say that we have a service, and that service is $800 that we do. And when you add in the products, that products that you're buying to put into it is going to say $300. And then you've got $100 of labor that you're paying on top of that. That means that your cost of goods is going to be $400. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take that $800 divided by the $400 in cost, and that's going to tell us we have $400 of profit. And we may have gross margin of $400, right? That initial profit. But if we take the $400 of gross margin dollars, that initial profit, divided by the original sales of the 800, it's going to tell us it's 50% is what our gross margin percentage is. Now, I know it gets complicated. It's way easier to do gross margin when you're looking at visually. Like I said, I've got some free videos on it over at localsmallbusinesscoach.tv. It's also in the show notes. And I am putting a whole detailed thing together in that course to help with that. But the main thing that I wanted to talk about today is, yes, you need to know those numbers. You absolutely need to know those numbers. But for some of you, one of the things that I run into is people are going, okay, well, if I know my company's gross margin and what my business is trying to do, my overall, when I take all my sales added up for the month or for the year, let's just say that my gross margin percent is, on average, it's running 60%. Let's just say it's running 60%. Can I use this information about gross margin and gross margin dollars to help with my pricing and what it is that I can sell? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Because if your target is 60%, but yet you keep doing jobs that are only 50%, what do you think is going to happen? That target of 60 is going to continue to be missed unless you've got other jobs that are going to make up that difference. And the average, because really your 60% is an average of all of your jobs combined. Well, that's perfectly okay. It really depends upon your mix. And that's something that, for example, when I sit down and I do coaching with people, we'll look at those different things. It's also a reason why I tell people that you need to know the gross margin of every product or service that you sell. So this way you can know those numbers of what gets you to what your target is. Because if you don't know, if you can't tell me what the gross margin is on any product or service that you sell, then how on earth are you going to hit your target every single time? It's blind luck. It's just you're accidentally getting that number, not because you're doing anything in particular. So it's one of the reasons why you really need to understand your gross margin. One of the things that happen is sometimes people, you want to know those percentages because you want to drive those products or services that are going to help you get that percentage. But at the same time is you sometimes have to be able to lay out two different options side by side and say, hey, am I going after gross margin dollars or should I be going after gross margin percentage? For most of you, because you don't understand gross margin, you just know that it's profit dollars. You just shoot for the profit. You just go for the dollars. What's going to make me more dollars? So for example, we're going to go back to those two that we used earlier, where let's just say if you have a $60 product or service and it costs you $25, remember our gross margin dollars was 35. It's the difference between the 60 minus the 25. So our gross margin dollars was $35. Now, gross margin percentage is by taking that gross margin divided by the sales. So that means our gross margin percentage is 58%. So basically, every time they do this job, they can count on keeping 58% towards gross margin dollars. That's what's going to move on to the next phase of their profit and loss statement is 58. And let's just say they do 10 of those jobs every week. So they're going to make $10 times that $35 of gross margin, which means at the end of the day, they're going to make $350 gross margin dollars. Okay. Now, if you also recall in our second example, it was one job at $800, but the cost of goods was going to be $400, and which means that their gross margin dollars is the $800 minus the $400, which is what got them the $400 of gross margin dollars. So even though the percentage was much lower because the percentage dropped all the way down to 50%, their gross margin dollars was actually pretty good because their gross margin dollar was $400. So if a person was, say, hey, which job should I do? Should I do the 10 jobs at the 60, knowing I'm going to have a higher percentage at 58%? Or am I better off doing the gross margin dollars where I know I'm going to get $400 out of it versus the $350? Listen, even though it's a lower gross margin percentage, here's the thing. You can't really say one way or another that you're 100% of the time going to go after the gross margin dollars versus gross margin percent. You have to have a mix of the two because obviously at the end of the day, it's about profit dollars. So yeah, you want to go for that $400 over the $350 of profit because that's going to put more dollars to the bottom line. But at the same time is you have to be consciously aware that you're making that choice to do that because what you're still going to have is all the percentages that go beyond and behind being able to do that sale. So part of the question becomes, how much money did you have to spend behind the scenes to be able to get that job? So for example, if you could get those $60 jobs all day long without any kind of advertising, without any kind of extra help, without any kind of, like, you don't need additional people, you don't need to spend all kinds of money to get them, that means that the rest of your expenses are pretty low. Whereas if you go for this 800 job, it sounds good, you make more money, but at the end of the day, you're having much higher expenses and costs to be able to get it. Then you have to ask yourself. So for example, if to get the $60 in jobs, you have to do $100 worth of advertising. So if you think about it, you spent $100 to get that $350 of profit versus if you had to go spend $200 to try to get that one $800 job. If you think about it, now that one's down to $300 as well. So everything's going to continue to come off of that money. And you've got to really look and understand that whole picture of what it takes in order for you to get that job. So sometimes profit dollars are going to be the way to go, and sometimes profit percentage or gross margin percentage is what's going to go. So you need to understand gross margin dollars and gross margin percentages because they both play a role. Now, I know some of you guys, your eyes are spinning. You're like, Tammy, what the hell did you just say? I couldn't follow along. I don't get it. And some of you, because you've been diving into your numbers, you completely were able to follow along with what's happening. And this is where I want to get everybody. I want to get people that if you are just completely glassed over, eyes going, what the heck, and checking out, then you know what? You need this more than anybody because you need to understand gross margin and gross margin percentage and the impact that it has on your business. That's why it's so important, why it's a key indicator as to how you can put more profit into your pocket. How can you make more money in your company at the end of the day? You've got to understand these numbers. So I don't expect you to necessarily follow along on a podcast, which is why, I hesitated for so long whether or not to talk numbers on an audio podcast. It's the number one reason why I'm building the course so that I can make it more visual for people. But whatever the case may be, you've got to understand these core things. I'm not asking you to memorize an entire encyclopedia. I'm not asking you to memorize a dictionary. I'm not asking you to memorize every calculation known to man. What I am going to ask you is there are 3 to 5, maybe 6 key core things you need to understand about your business and your numbers, because that's what's going to help you put more money to the bottom line. That's where I really want to take you. And gross margin is one of those things because gross margin can help you make intelligent decisions on if you should do something or not. Because sometimes what happens is we get these stars in our eyes about something going, oh my God, I totally can do this $2,000 job. Well, if you're not going to make any money at the end of that $2,000 job and it's only going to bleed you dry because of all the costs associated with it, don't you think you should know that? If you don't realize that at the end of the day that you are starting with a certain amount of money to run your business, if you know that you need at minimum $1,000 to run your business because that's what your expenses are, that's your break-even point is that $1,000, then how do you know if you're making enough off of those other dollars? on a whim and a prayer? Do you just not get to that? I mean, if you're getting to the end of the month and going, oh my God, I've got to go out and make another $500 or I can't pay my bills, that tells me that you went into it not necessarily knowing that you were on track to do the jobs or how many jobs you needed to do. Because if you know and understand your gross margin and you understand your gross margin dollars, you should be able to look at your business and have a plan to say, I need to sell X number of what to be able to hit that. I need to be able to do this many jobs, making this amount of gross margin on it in order for me to pay those bills. And that's what we want to try to do. This is one of the reasons why we want to try to help educate you on your business to understand your business that much more. Now, I'm going to continue to do my part to try to help with that education. And by the way, I love those of you guys that have been reaching out, asking me questions about your business and asking me, just saying, hey, this is what I'm looking at. Here's what happened. Can you help me understand this a little bit better and whatnot? Now, listen, I am not an accountant, nor do I pretend to be one on TV. I'm not a tax expert. But what I am is somebody that has been running businesses, big businesses, little businesses for years and years and years. And I'm telling you that if you understand your numbers and how they play together, you're going to be more successful at the end of the day. You're going to make more profit in there. And if you want to sit down with those people at the end of the year, absolutely, you need to do that. You need to know where your money's going. You need to understand to make sure you pay your proper taxes and everything else. But what we're trying to do here is to give you a fighting shot the other 365 days out of the year on putting as much as possible to the bottom line. And that's what we're trying to do. And you don't need to be overwhelmed by all of the things everybody and their mother is going to tell you. Listen, the further along people are in their business, the more detail they can go into about some things you've never even heard of. And honestly, a lot of that comes because as you grow your business, you have to look at more and more numbers at different things. You're going to have to look at your trends. You're going to have to look at what your conversion rates are and all these other there's a bunch of other numbers behind that you absolutely need to know as you grow your business. But right now, we're just starting out at the basics. You've got to understand the basics of your business in order for you to be able to do that. So today, I just wanted to take a few minutes and talk a little bit more about gross margin and gross margin percentage. And I want to make sure that you remember that you need to know what it is before you make a decision on which jobs are better to go after and which ones aren't. So once again, just to recap, gross margin dollars is the amount of dollars that are left over after you pay your cost of goods. So if you sell something for $15 and it costs you $7 to get it, that means your cost of goods are $7. So $15 minus the $7 tells you your gross margin dollars is that $8. And then in order for us to be able to tell you what your gross margin percentage, we're going to take those gross margin dollars. So we're going to take that $8 and we're going to take that $8 and we're going to divide it by the what we sold it for, which was the 15, and that's going to tell us our gross margin dollars were 53%. Now you'll notice I did not include labor in that because typically when we do products, our labor is just more of a sales function behind the scenes or an operational function. So we don't include that. Where we include labor hours is when that thing could not be done without somebody doing it. Okay. So you cannot install the water heater without somebody installing it. So service-based businesses, you tend to include your labor hours in it. The problem is a lot of you don't include your labor hours because you are the labor. You need to start thinking like a business. Instead, assign a labor hour. If you were to hire somebody to do that, what would you have to pay them? So if that item happens to be $150 for that service, and you have to hire someone for an hour and a half at $20, think about it. If you pay them $20 an hour for an hour and a half, that means you've got a labor hour of $30. And let's just say there's an additional $10 in costs for the products that you have to use. That means your cost of goods for that service is the labor hours of $30 plus the $10 of cost. So in this particular case, $150 minus $40 is going to tell you what your gross margin is. So in which case that would make it $110. And to figure out your percentage, you're going to take that $110 of gross margin and divide it by the 150. It's going to tell you that your gross margin percentage is 73%. Now, hopefully everybody's kind of following along. I know I go pretty fast, but the main thing is you just need to understand those percentages and those dollars. You need to understand both. I will pop on here probably either once a month or every other month, and I'm going to keep talking about gross margin because I really need you to understand this percentage. It's key. It's critical. Matter of fact, it's so key and critical. I'm actually making it the first module in the training course because everything starts with that. Because even if you look at your profit and loss statement, the very first line is sales, and the very second line is your cost of goods and your gross margin dollars and your gross margin percentage. So before I even dive into the P&L, I'm explaining this so that way it helps the P&L, which is the second module, to be able to understand that because it's that critical that you understand these numbers. So thank you for indulging me. If your eyes are still spinning and bulging, that's a good sign. It means you were trying to pay attention, and it means you were trying to learn this thing. And it does take practice. It takes practice. It takes practice. I'm creating, I might even put I think I will. I've created a worksheet and a spreadsheet to help people understand their gross margin. They just got to put it in and it'll calculate it out for you. So I can make that available to people. My goal is to share these tools and resources with you because I really want you to understand these things. So I'll put something together to go with this. That way you can download it. We'll put it in the show notes or over at the localsmallbusinesscoach.com website as well. I think there's something on there, but I'll update it. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I know I'm rattling, and I know when I rattle, it means it's time for me to go. But I'm excited. I'm so excited that you guys are really starting to pay attention to your numbers and wanting to understand them. It warms my heart. Nothing that I've talked about by far has ever had the kind of response that this is having. So I know it's where I want to keep going and really dedicating these Thursdays to this. And even if your eyes are spinning, I know it. Just hang in there. I promise it gets easier the more you do it. The practice. If you go back to if you've got kids and you're teaching your kids how to go 1 + 2, their brains are hurting as they try to work their way to 3. Now you had 3 in your head before I ever did anything. It does get easier, just like tying your shoes or any other habit that we do on a regular basis. I promise you, as much as you may hate numbers, you do numbers all the time. You just don't realize it. And we're just going to help you be more comfortable with them, because if you're comfortable with them and you understand the why behind them and why they're important, I think that you're going to find that it is much better for you. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and I will talk to you on the next episode. Bye for now. Hey, badass business owner, if you're interested in taking your knowledge to the next level on understanding the numbers of your business, then head on over to knowyourbusinessnumberscourse.com and sign up to be one of the first to get any new items I put together to help you take your skills to the next level. Not only will you get immediate access to any new videos I create, but you'll also get copied on any tools I create to help you get better at understanding your business numbers. Plus, get any updates on the upcoming course, Know Your Business Numbers, where I will be taking a much deeper dive into the numbers that will help you become the badass business owner I know you are. So once again, if you want to keep building the skill, building this business muscle, check out the link in the show notes and head on over to knowyourbusinessnumberscourse.com and sign up now. Don't you think it's time to use your business numbers to earn more profits?